seems one thing after another for our military men and women overseas serving in Iraq and Afghanistan. We've all heard of PTSD. Now there's something called CTE, and I hope I pronounced it correctly, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is basically brain injuries from being too close to bomb blasts. Colonel Kimberly Olson is U.S. Air Force retired. CTE is what it is. Colonel, how many of these vets serving over there have this problem with traumatic brain injury because of being too close to a bomb sound?
Well, I think the good news about the study is that now we have a mechanism to see how many are injured with this mild brain injury. And I think what's important is that now the vet has a diagnostic tool so that they can approach a brain injury much like you would approach a broken leg. You know, a lot of these vets come back and go, I know something's wrong, and they get sent to a psychiatrist, and what really needs to happen is they need to go see the neurologist. So I think that's really important for our vets.
Even exposure to one single bomb blast, right, has its consequences.
Absolutely. You know, the brain rattles around inside the skull and it gets bruised, and sometimes those injuries don't manifest themselves for a while. But again, I think having the ability to identify that works wonders for the veteran, because now they've got an approach that, hey, something is wrong, and let's work to fix it.
Now, somebody could have CTE and PTSD right at the same time. That's got to be very difficult to deal with for a military guy or girl.
Yeah, and it's very difficult for their families, too, because, you know, you've missed this person for 18 months and they come back and they're, you know, obviously something's not right with them. But what we know from working with vets is the stronger the support circle is around them, the quicker that they'll get better. So I say to families, you know, hang in there. It does get better.
I did some reading up on this before we came on the air, and there's the issue of the noise from the bomb going off. And there's something called somewhat residual. They call it blast wind, which is the air pressure that is created by the bomb, and the winds are stronger. It could be stronger than a Category 4 hurricane. I found that to be most interesting. So blast wind, that's really wild.
Yeah, I think it's the secondary pressure of you have the explosion and then the pressure change of the air, which, you know, sometimes will bust your eardrums. I mean, it's people who've been around that will say that. You get tinnitus, it'll ring forever. But again, I think it's important to identify that something actually physically happened to you. And now once we have research around the brain, not just with vets, but this can translate to the concussions that kids get or, you know, some of our athletes get. So we can create better equipment to protect our vets and, again, those that go into sports.
Now, is there an issue, Colonel, because in terms of protecting soldiers, are there challenges because these injuries aren't the result of repeated blows to the head, like you mentioned, football players or folks who get concussions? There's some different circumstances here that create the problem. Is that an issue for protecting soldiers?
Well, again, the study that we're visiting with only researched 10 people and then 10 control groups. So I think you would have to have a little more research around it and then figure out what we can do to protect. You know, we have a phenomenal ability for folks to recover right there on site and then be medevaced out. That's how come we have so many folks that have lived through some pretty tremendous injuries. And so medical research is getting better. So maybe there's something they can do to not let the brain swell or something like that if they know these kinds of blasts have that kind of impact on the brain. So that may be the better approach than just the equipment change.
Yep. Tough job in more ways than one. Thank you, Colonel. Colonel Kimberly Olson, U.S. Air Force, retired. These mild brain injuries coming from bomb blasts and what they call blast winds, which are equally as damaging, too. 570 WSYR.